Hey, so there's one thing I've noticed recently, right? So when chatting to like Chinese people about like Chinese culture, or at least like when interacting with people, when you notice how things are done differently, like that kind of acts like to hold a mirror up to show the reflection of like how English things are. Now I kind of like so all of the expats I've met I've really liked, but there's this like reputation among some expats that like the others are they're the sort of people who'll come up to you and be like, so Chinese culture is like this or it's like that or China's like this. And like it's a country of like 1.4 billion people. Like I don't really think it's like anything. Like my favorite quote describing this is that China isn't a country, it's like a civilization pretending to be one, right? Like think if Europe like so China had this stage called the Warring States period, and then it was just united as one country. Like think if like Charlemagne was a really good general, or Napoleon was an excellent general, like better than they were, and succeeded in uniting Europe as one nation, and then it stayed like that for 3,000 years. Like just as it would be an oversimplification to say that like Europe under those circumstances or under current circumstances is one culture. Like I also think it's a massive oversimplification to say that like China is one culture. But like just ignore this like very messy desk. See this piece of paper, right? Here we've got a black bit, and then that black bit kind of fades into white as the shading goes down. Now, just because there's no clear distinction where one begins and the other ends, it doesn't mean the concept of blackness and whiteness is totally redundant. Just because there is no one culture doesn't mean that we can describe parts of it in the way that we can describe parts of greyness. So the thing that's then been interesting is how like the existence of a culture which is like different, and like highlights the sort of weirdnesses within British culture. So one thing is kind of like the subversiveness almost, or like the lack to be the reluctance to be like out in front of English culture. So the best example of this is I was sitting around at lunch today with like a group of friends, and it's the end of the meal. We all need to go off and do our own things. One of the English girls present like puts a scarf on. We keep chatting for about 10 minutes, and then like one of the Chinese girls is like, "All right, okay, let's go. We'll stand up and leave." And I go to the English person afterwards, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Well, I make a joke out of it, like, I'm aware you wanted to go like 10 minutes before that because you put your scarf on." And like the Americans who were there like laughed because like that's a ridiculously British thing to do, right? It's to like have this like, I want to go, but I couldn't possibly say. So you like do this really small signaling gesture, and like I is the only English person there, or the only other English person there. So the other person who noticed it. Like, I don't know, so it makes me think of, like, my Uncle Simon, like, whenever we're having a meal out, and he's like, and he thinks we should go on and leave and do the next thing. Always goes, right, okay then. And then that's kind of like the concluding sentence almost. But very tenably, if you wanted to stay, like, you could just kind of ignore that and just choose to stay, which I guess is, I don't know why you do it, it's weird. But it's certainly interesting. And, like, that's kind of the element of like British culture like I like the least. It's the like subversiveness almost, whereby like if you have an issue with someone you'll just never tell them. Like it's the like jokey emotional repression thing, which is just dull, it's boring and difficult to navigate. But so like it makes me think of like one time when I went for a run with a Polish guy, a Polish girl and an American guy. And the Polish girl was like, "Oh, you two are really good at maths." And I was like, No, I'm just, I'm lucky. Like, I'm not, nothing special." The Polish girl was like, "Oh, you're both good at maths." And the American guy was like, "Yeah, no, I'm good at maths." And that kind of just highlights the difference there, like, quite well. And, it's the kind of, you catch yourself doing it because you have these perceptions of, like, what's okay. Like, talking about money's a big thing. So in China, kind of like, having a lot of money is a thing to be proud of. In that, like, so to get married in Beijing, you need to own a house and own a car. And whereas in England, you'd never talk about money, right? Like, there was this moment where we were, the people in the office sitting around, and like, the English girl was like, so I was like, we're talking about where we all lived. The English girl was like, "Oh, I live in this bit of London." I was like, oh, she's like, oh, I live in the East End. I was like, oh, where in the East End? And she said, I can't remember the name of the place, but she said like a relatively rich area. And she was like, but I like to say the East End, so people don't assume the worst of me. I live in a rich area. And like, if you think about that, that's weird. Like the very fact that that's a thing that people do, like you, like hide your privilege for fear of being judged. Whereas like, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like to me, it intuitively follows. But I can also understand how that wouldn't intuitively follow to some people. And that in and of itself is quite cool. So yeah, that's kind of like my crack for this video today. Just a chat of like the kind of like the weird nuances and differences that I've noticed, which are just quite interesting.